What happens when AI stops assisting marketers and starts making decisions on its own?
Incisiv and Adobe's state of customer experience research shows that while brands are experimenting with GenAI, scaling it and trusting it will be the next frontier.
Today, we explore the rise of agentic workflows and what they mean for the future of marketing. Welcome, retail and data junkies, to Season 2, Episode 6 of the Retail Razor Data Blade Show, the podcast that slices through complex retail research to deliver sharp, actionable insights you can use today. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm Casey Golden.
Casey, thanks to our friends at Incisiv and Adobe, in this miniseries, we have covered the pressures facing CMOs today in the age of AI and the data challenge that creates. So now it's time to look ahead because AI is changing the game faster than any of us expected, especially after 2025's holiday shopping season.
Yeah, and it's not just about generating marketing and product content anymore. GenAI is evolving into agentic workflows, autonomous systems that optimize, allocate, and learn. That's a big shift for marketing teams.
Exactly. So in this episode, the final installment in our three-part series on Incisiv and Adobe's research on the state of customer experience in retail and consumer goods, we are exploring how brands can prepare for the agentic future that honestly is already here, and what governance and new roles are needed. And we've got both Bruce Richards from Adobe and Dave Weinand from Incisiv here to help us break it down.
You can tell that this is a heavy-hitting episode since we needed to bring back both Bruce and Dave to tie it all together. This is the first for a Data Blades episode, to guess.
Yeah, that's right. But before we dive in, we have one simple ask for our audience. If you enjoy this show, please hit us with a 5-star rating and drop a short review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you're listening.
Don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. It really helps the show grow.
And remember to check out the other shows in the Retail Razor Podcast Network, The Retail Razor Show, Retail Transformers, and Blades of Greatness, if you haven't already. You'll find them all in your favorite podcast app and, of course, on our YouTube channel.
Now let's raise our data blades and welcome back both Dave Weinand, co-founder and chief customer officer of Incisiv, and Bruce Richards, global industry strategy and marketing lead for retail and consumer goods at Adobe, to the show.
Welcome back to the Retail Razor Data Blade Show. Dave, Bruce, we're all here for the exciting conclusion to this three-part series on evolving the role of marketing in the age of AI. And you practically can't have an AI discussion these days without talking about agentic AI and autonomous workflows with AI and all of those good things. So this is really where the big payoff comes in from the research, isn't it?
It is, definitely is. It's, we've done a lot of work to understand the setups and the foundations and how we get to the AI and the Gen AI story. So yeah, this is the big payoff.
So it's kind of all been leading up to this moment. Diving into part 3 of this series, we'll learn how Gen AI, agentic systems, and autonomous workflows come together to magically solve every marketer's dream, right?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
It's just a button you push. It's perfect. You just go.
All right. So diving in, the studies and research show that while Gen AI boosts content production by nearly 50% with higher conversion rates, adoption maturity is still limited. So why are most brands still experimenting, but so few scaling with this?
Well, I mean, it's true. Most brands are stuck in Gen AI pilot mode. It lives in isolated pockets, a copy test in an email, social experiment, a few internal tools. But the problem is that it's not wired into core workflows and governance and measurement. So retailers and consumer goods companies are seeing real gains in content speed and conversion. But to scale it, they have to do a few things. They have to treat it as part of the main content and data system. They have to embed it into processes and templates. And they have to hold it to the same governance and performance standards as the rest of marketing. And until they can do that, it's going to remain what I call a side gadget, not a core capability.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And what's kind of the basis of all of that? Change management. I mean, because this is a different way of doing things. So, there's organizational change. There's, as Bruce pointed out, there's change in processes, all those kinds of things. So pilots are great. And I think that we've seen that there has been some early gains and some productivity enhancements, but to use it as a tool versus a form of organizational transformation, it takes a lot.
Yeah, I think most organizations think of it as a fun thing to play with, but they're not giving enough thought to what does this mean to my overall organization. So you're right, process is part of it, but process and organization go hand in hand.
Yeah, finding where to implement. Definitely, that's been one of the challenges, right? Replace something we already do or rethink the entire premise of what we do and create something different. We build in 2026, right? I love replacing things that we built in 1996. What's the difference between AI that produces content and the AI that drives decisions and helps in decision making?
Two kinds of AI in marketing. Content only kind of answers what could we say. It helps write emails, develop product descriptions, social posts, images, translations, things like that. On the flip side, we have decision driving AI, and that's kind of what should we do next for who, for which person, for which channel, for which offer or budget. And the second type, that what should we do next, that's plugged into profiles and context and outcomes. And it's not just a blank page, which is kind of like the content one is you're starting with a blank page and you're developing from there. This is not starting with a blank page. You've got a lot behind it. It uses data about the customer and performance to decide actions and not just generate words or visuals.
Yeah. And we talked about it, or Bruce did, I should say, talked about it in the second podcast, which is in order to do all of kind of the decisioning based AI, you do have to have kind of the unified data, or ideally have the unified data aspect of it. So
critical.
So jump back to the last podcast and learn all about that.
Yeah, that's right.
Bruce.
That's right.
Yeah.
So one of the concerns or questions maybe that comes up a lot in these discussions at retailers and brands is about quality control, right? And the costs associated with that and with that kind of AI adoption. So how should organizations balance between speed, scale, and trust of the output?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the study showed that costs can be saved on the content generation and all those kinds of things, but QC costs actually are up as high as 30% higher. So really companies should kind of look at their output in a couple different buckets. One being, what are the low risk applications? Things like FAQ responses or order confirmation or sizing shit, those types of things that can get spot checks from humans, but the regulated stuff, the very important type of content, say, hero messaging or press release, those types of things really gets full review. So I think all of us have all come to the conclusion, and we're all in agreement that the human in the loop is critical to all of this. So we don't need to kind of beat that drum anymore, but you have to incorporate things like brand voice, quality scoring, those types of things to really get the maximum out of this Gen AI and agentic adoption.
Yeah, I love that risk-based review idea, Dave. It's heavy human review for high-risk content and the alternate for lower risk. But then coming out of that is sort of this system-level instrumentation. It's how do you track errors and approvals and issues so you can fix the system, not just the individual pieces of work. So yeah, and the humans play a critical role there as well.
With that human in the loop, and we begin to take POCs and scale them, and content starts generating 50,000 to 1 million pieces of content to regionalize and personalize locally, how are we going to keep that human in the loop to review each thing before it can be published?
Well, I mean, I think that we're kind of in a state of evolution versus jumping deep into the pool, right?
Yeah.
So today, AI is mostly assistive. It's bringing to the forefront insights and summarizing performance and suggesting audiences and certain pieces of content. But we're starting to see agents acting in a bigger way. But the thing is, you've got to have the guardrails in place. So things like budgets within limits, pre-approvals of journeys, and optimizing replenishment programs for CPG brands. And that's where The humans have to set the goals and the boundaries. Agents can handle the day-to-day micro decisions, but the humans have to play that critical role. So what are the guardrails and how are they monitored on a regular basis? And that's a human role.
How do you see the shift from assistive AI to autonomous agents playing out?
Well, what I just said, we're kind of in this assistive mode right now, right?
Yeah.
So as it starts to shift, it becomes this, although I said evolution, but it seems to me that the speed with which this is happening is more of a revolution.
Right.
It's happening so fast, but it's that move from assistive to agents playing a much bigger role. And then over time, agents will take on more narrow, well-defined domains from an end-to-end perspective. So while humans are focusing on strategy, rules, and exceptions and setting the goals and boundaries, agents are going to handle those day-to-day micro decisions. So there's sort of there's going to be a balancing, right, over time. And like I said, that time, it seems to be compressing as we speak. So,
Exactly.
So the future isn't that AI replaces marketers. It's marketers manage systems of agents that handle the operational load. So that becomes, and that's actually what I just said is a scenario that's going to continue to evolve as people see how this works within the context of their organizations.
And think about the things that take a lot of time but don't add a ton of value. Send time optimization, bid management, things like that marketers are responsible for, but I guess it could be deemed strategic, but overall, those are the kinds of things that agents should be able to really step in, because as Bruce pointed out, they're very narrow type of applications. And so from that perspective, those types of things can take time, give marketers time back while those types of tools are being allocated from an agent perspective. At some point, will it all kind of come together? Anybody's guess. I mean, the assumption is yes, but time will tell.
Yeah, and who in a marketing organization isn't going to want to remove some of those mundane tasks from their day-to-day so they can focus on strategic work? That's where some of the excitement comes in from a human perspective. It's like, wait a minute, I get to do this instead of that. That's really exciting to marketers.
So for our audience and our listeners, can you give a couple examples of where you've seen agentic workflows offer the highest value and still have the lowest risk? Does this even exist? It sounds
there were a couple of examples, like I said, automated budget reallocation based on performance or lack thereof.
Right.
That personal email send optimization, like REI does that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. REI has set it up so they know their shoppers' habits. Mm-hmm. They can adjust send time based on weather, or even if they know a person's an early riser, then they can send the 6 a.m. email to that person. So those types of things are happening. Home Depot is doing that with bid management, automated bid management with Google Ads and Meta and things like that. So again, low risk optimization type things that are being used right now. There are specific applications, but they're not. I mean, they're making an impact, but they're not integral to the whole organizational fabric of marketing in these companies. So
it's a great retail example, Dave. I think some others, without giving brand examples, is replenishment nudges for consumer goods or CPG brands, specifically in the cosmetic space. Timed reminders based on usage patterns, based on product shelf life, things like that, respecting frequency caps and consent and all of those things. That works really well for CPG brands. Another place is product tagging and cleaning up data, keeping those digital shelves up to date with information that's relevant to consumers. Those tend to be pretty low risk and high reward, because when you think about the overall experience, if the product information isn't correct and up to date, the customer gets annoyed and they walk away. So risk versus reward there is obvious.
Yeah. Yes, these are great examples of these kind of low risk scenarios where you can quickly get some value out of implementing these agentic and autonomous workflows. So if we think forward a little bit more as to where we can see more integration into more strategic marketing type activities this way, you also, I think, start to ask questions around governance. And in the research, I think you've shown that 63% of organizations don't really have any formal AI governance measures today. So how urgent do you think it is to close that gap?
Very. Very,
That's a leading question.
Very, period.
look,
That's it. The answer's done. Very.
Gary,
mic drop.
it's what lets you it's what lets you move fast and stay safe. So without it, organizations are going to end up in one of two bad places. Either they take too much risk because anybody can spin up AI use cases, right? Or they move too slowly because every single idea triggers a long legal and compliance debate. So neither one of those is a good place for organizations to be. So for retail and consumer goods, AI governance, which covers use cases and data consent and quality and accountability, is what's going to allow them to be really confident and say yes to stronger AI and agentic scenarios instead of getting stuck in the pilots that they're already stuck in, right? This is how they're going to move forward. So governance, while a lot of people go, that's not the fun part of this, it's the required part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. How do we get into, we're in marketing. How do we get into governance? And it's so boring.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but it's obviously very important. And as I like to say, just because our government doesn't believe in putting any guardrails around AI, I think companies should.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a hot potato, right? Nobody wants to be the one that like, well, I don't want to get in trouble. And so it's like the hot potato. And then like something didn't get done because nobody really wanted the accountability for it.
Yep.
But I mean, and not like organizations need more committees, but AI ethics committee or something, some sort of governing board that looks at it from a lot of different perspectives. It would be a good thing to think about.
Yeah, get rid of 2 current committees to get this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting when we first started at Adobe, when we first started talking about these solutions, that was one of the first questions that always came up from any part of the organization. How do we know this is safe? How is it governed? And things like that. So it's definitely a topic of conversation, but you're right. It's a hot potato. It's like, well, we'll talk about it, but I don't want to hold it in my hands too long.
Right. I don't want to hold it in my hands too long.
Yeah.
It's burned.
But it is inevitable. They're going to, at some point, somebody's going to have to sit there and deal with it, right? I mean, your guys' research already showed that retailers expect a 58% increase in organic search volume to shift to AI-powered platforms, and like in the next 24 months, right?
Right.
But just this past holiday season, we saw the future arrive a little early. AI-driven traffic was up 693%.
Yeah. Just during
that's Adobe data.
Yeah, and that's Adobe data. And that's just looking at the peak periods of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and it's the holiday period. That's incredible amount of growth. And we started saying how evolution versus revolution and the speed with which this is happening, that's proof, right? So, I mean, what's happening is marketers have to treat AI-powered platforms as the new discovery layer. It's not just a feature. It's something they have to start focusing on now. And that means they have to create content that answers real questions and problems that consumers have. They have to structure labeling content so AI systems can parse through it and trust and reuse it. They have to think in terms of use cases and intent, right? Not just the question that's put forward. It has to dig deeper and understand what is your intent in asking this question, not just a single word. So it's really about setting up ways to capture and tag AI referred traffic so you can learn what's working and optimize those journeys. And marketers just historically are not set up to think that way.
Right.
It's fact-based, move on, fact-based, move on. This is a whole, we talked about culture before. This is a major shift.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how many decisions and how much strategy was around how the consumer views something and really like where their mouse is, what their heat maps, things of that nature. Like how are consumers engaging with this content, this site, these products, the customer journey. And now it's like you have to put yourself in the shoes of a customer. Why are you asking this question? What are you thinking about? And I think that this is a very compelling shift, is like, even with AI, it's based off of 5% of our consciousness. I've heard something where so much of what we do in our decision-making and how we feel about something isn't even vocalized. You know, it's like going on in our heads. And now we have to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of our customer to say, what do I think you might ask so that I can prepare all of these answers and this content and narrative around things that you may inquire about, or other things you might be searching for that I need to show up. Like, we need to understand how people are thinking, not necessarily what.
And that's no small shift.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I mean, we're talking about it, but I don't know if we're talking about it enough.
Yeah.
More
Well,
we need more psychologists and psychologists.
It's almost like it's a new role for marketers, right? I mean, so we kind of started out with this series talking about what's the change, right, to the role of the marketer. But this is what that big shift really implies, because these are things that we're talking about that marketers didn't think about before, right? So now we had things like persona mapping, right? But now we're really going a little bit beyond that, I think, in this approach. And you have to think in terms of like, how are you an AI operator or owning the whole journey? And that how this
journey architect.
There you go. Yeah. So, what are these just new roles that we're going to see pop up in a defined manner in marketing organizations?
Maybe we're going to start adding therapists to marketing organizations who can analyze what did you really mean by that question. But I joke, but I think that there are definitely going to be new roles coming into organizations. When we talk about what this looks like, it's a completely different journey for the consumer. They're entering the brand from a different place and from a different emotional level. So things like journey owners, people who are going to be responsible for the end-to-end journey across every channel. You've usually got email marketers and social marketers, who owns that journey in total? That could be a new role. AI operators and AI product owners, like, how does that manifest in an organization once they start to be able to scale efficiently? It can't just be this one-off and bolted onto a particular project. It's got to be something that's owned throughout the org. Dave, any other ideas on what some roles might look like?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we talked a lot about multiple different agents. So if you think about, there could be a role where there's someone actually just managing that portfolio of agents. At some point, as we talked about, they may all be unified, but right now it's like, okay, someone has to oversee, the management of multiple agents inside of an organization. So that could be, and whether that's a marketing role or an IT role, I guess that's to be determined. But
it doesn't sound like a very fun job. Marketing's usually fun.
A fun one could be content system leads. As one of the biggest conversations we're having, particularly in consumer goods, is this enormous increase in content and the need because you're providing content to agents, not just consumers, and to retail media networks and all of those places. So a couple of years ago, we were talking about in 2024 and 2025, we were looking at like a 5x multiplier on content. Now it's 10 to 20x because everybody's going, how am I going to do this? But then when we talked about these silos in these different areas of where content lives, who owns all of that, and making sure that the right piece of content gets to the right consumer in the right time, and that it's part of that overall message that AI is spitting out. It's saying, here's your answer, and here's what this should look like. Right. So that's probably another critical role, is going beyond just a template to owning the entire content supply chain.
Yeah, like the content supply chain. Content has its own journey now.
Yep.
In this new order of marketing. So I love where this is going. And we've covered a lot in this 3-part series. And I think we've painted a very different picture of what the future looks like, I think, for CMOs, for marketers, and one where AI is helping them succeed more often than not, to convert better, tell better stories. And I think maybe the most important takeaway I have from this whole series is that it's allowing marketers to do things with a much higher velocity than they could before at a much bigger scale. And I think that brings with it a good, strong potential for business growth for that. So I'm really, really pleased that we covered so much ground. I want to thank you both for sharing so many details from the research that you guys put together on the state of customer experience, both for retail and consumer goods. I want to thank you for helping us really understand the value behind everything that you uncovered in that research. And of course, we'll be sure and have links to all these things throughout the show so everybody can download them and digest it for themselves.
And we're about to hit the field with the 2026 version. So
excellent.
Ooh.
It's continuing on.
Yeah, I talked about speed, right? We're talking about it. 25 version, and we're already in the 2026. More exciting insights to come. It's been really eye-opening to understand kind of where the industries are, the differences between retailers and consumer goods brands. There are a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. So read into the reports, because you'll start to uncover some great insights.
Well, we'll certainly have the links to both reports in the show notes, and we encourage our audience to make use of what we've learned in this series and go a little deeper and review those full reports. Thank you. Ricardo, I'd say this episode
Thanks so much.
and mini-series is a wrap.
It is.
Loved this episode? Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods, and hit subscribe so you never miss an update. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe before you go. I'm Casey Golden.
Follow Retail Razor on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram, and subscribe to our Substack for highlights and bonus content in your inbox. For transcripts and guest info, head to retailrazor.com. Data Blaze is part of the Retail Razor Podcast Network, the #1 indie podcast network for retail. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay sharp, be data-driven, and harness AI. This is the Retail Razor Data Blaze.